Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and it's all sunshine and rainbows at the minute at Celtic, isn't it? We're on track to lifting our 55th title this weekend. There's a potential treble in the offing. It's a very good time to be a Celtic fan, so I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, and certainly don't take this as an attempt by me to dampen the mood around the club at the minute. However, we have to deal with the very real possibility that this summer could be a big one for Celtic, not just in terms of incomings, but with outgoings. Celtic could lose a couple of big hitters in this window because that's the natural order. People come into Celtic, they stay for a couple of years to advance their career, and they go. And that applies to two of our star players from this season. Let's talk about that. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. It would be much appreciated. We are so close now to 50,000 subscribers. In fact, we're around 700 subscribers away. Can we do it by the Scottish Cup final? It's a big ask, but let's try. Go down below, hit both those buttons. Shall we get into the Celtic transfer talk for today? Specifically towards players potentially leaving the club, which is the kind of Celtic transfer talk I hate, but nonetheless it has to be done. Now, Reo Hatate has had a marvellous season in a Celtic shirt, once more building on the already strong foundations we knew he had as a player, especially in recent weeks. He's really been at the forefront of our charge towards a potential treble. He's been dropping man of the match performance after man of the match performance, and everybody's talking about Reo Hatate again in the same way we spoke about him when he first arrived at the club. And he's always been a bit of a player that's hard to pin down and get a consistent opinion of, because everybody changes their mind like the weather with him. And I think, he doesn't help that sometimes, but I think ultimately what you've got to say is he's a great player. He's a magic player, and when he's on his day, wow, he's one of the best midfielders we've seen in recent years at Celtic. However, when you're that good, it comes with the price that Celtic fans need to pay, and that is ultimately losing him. And next year he's been touted as one of the Celtic players who could be on for a move elsewhere. And if reports are anything to go off, we might be expecting that this summer. Now, last night on the Daily Record hotline, journalist Keith Jackson reported that Celtic fans might be waiting for some bad news when it comes to Reo Hatate's Celtic situation this summer. And I know that Keith Jackson is one of those journalists, especially at the Daily Record, that, has a bit of an opinion amongst Celtic fans. He's not one that's favoured much, but nonetheless, been a very reputable source over the years. This is what he had to say. He said, I think you're going to have to brace yourself for bad news on that front in regards to Reo Hatate. He's been making noises, and I think people inside Celtic know it. I'm not going to say he's been agitating, because I don't think he's been rocking any boats, but it's fairly well established, well known behind the scenes, that there's a touch of Kyogo Furahashi's about it. That's one reason why one of the priority targets for Rodgers this summer will be a central midfield player. I don't think Celtic want to lose Hatate, but I think he feels the time is right to make a move. He's probably looking about getting into one of Europe's top leagues. He's just not going to get the opportunity to play Champions League football at Celtic, and I think he's starving for something more than that. However, if he's picked up the phone to his mate Kyogo, he might be learning that the grass isn't always greener. Now, at the end of the day, as much as you might be refusing to listen to this, as much as you might be going, it's nonsense, I don't believe a word he says, if you're going to sit there and plead ignorance to it, then I really do envy you. I wish I could be that ignorant. I wish I could be that naive. But realistically, this was always going to be the case, and I think a lot of Celtic fans have accepted that this could be the last season with Reo Hatate. What Keith Jackson is telling us here isn't even necessarily a huge exclusive. A wee bit of an exclusive that apparently is making a wee bit of noise behind the scenes, perhaps, but it's not an exclusive in the sense that it's not a surprise hearing that Reo might want to leave this summer. In fact, I think it could be perfect timing for him. He's came in, he's been here for over 3 years now. He's getting a little bit on in his career. He will want to make that jump. It's perfectly natural to a Japanese player who probably had no interest in Celtic before signing. He owes nothing to this club. So if there's a move on the table for him, I'm fully expecting to see him go. And I know some people just don't want to hear that, but if you haven't accepted that's the reality of being a Celtic fan right by now, I'm so sorry, but you've got to start. Interestingly enough, this is all sort of ramped up after this story dropped on the 8th of May, saying that Reo Hatate is wanted by Udinese in Serie A this summer. There was an article dropped saying that Udinese have scouted Reo Hatate as they weigh up a big money summer swoop for the Celtic midfielder, and there was apparently officials that have been sent to Celtic matches to specifically check out Reo Hatate. On top of that, they said there's also clubs in France and Germany who are keen on Reo Hatate, who has 3 years to run on the extension he signed in September 2023. That obviously means Celtic are in a great position to demand top dollar if any of these teams try to come in and sign him. So all the cards are with Celtic. You know, we are the ones that get to control what happens here. We get to drive the price up as high as we like. At the end of the day, there's 3 years on that contract. If it doesn't suit Celtic, then they won't let it happen. Obviously, you've got to try and keep everybody happy, and you don't want to force Rio to stay if he wants off. But we are in a really, really good position. So either way, I think the Celtic will benefit from what happens this summer. We'll either make a lot of money and we'll move on as we always tend to, or maybe we'll hold off and we'll say, well, 3 years in his contract, we're in no rush to see him go. So yeah, it's not a terrible position to be in. It's also not ideal losing your best players, but if there's interest out there, I'm pretty sure that Reo Hatate and his agent will be putting the feelers out. We'll be having some conversations. Udinese currently sit 12th in Serie A, so they won't be playing in Europe next year. We don't know who the unnamed clubs are from France or Germany. What I will say is, if he is watching what's happened with Kyogo, maybe he will think twice. I don't see Udinese as a very glamorous move. They're a team who have sort of struggled in recent years. There's been no really any consistency there. And I don't think just because Udinese have been named in this article, that's the only team that we have to talk about here. There'll be loads of teams, and maybe ones who are in Europa League or Conference League football, and that could offer them more money. But Celtic are a Champions League team. They are fighting for trophies, and another great year might see even bigger moves open up for him. So I hope he considers his moves carefully. Grass isn't always greener. Now we have to talk about Daizen Maeda, the other Japanese sensation who has enjoyed the season of his career thus far. He's of course been named Celtic's Player of the Year. He's been named PFA Player of the Year in Scotland. Daizen Maeda is going to be on a few teams' radars this summer. And we've already spoke about the apparent interest from some of England's bigger sides, even as big as Arsenal and Liverpool apparently. Not so much buying into all of that, but there has been more reports linking him with other clubs down south. Ones that would maybe look like more realistic moves for him. I hate these videos. I hate it. I feel like I'm touting everybody with a move. I don't want anyone to go. Can I just clarify that? I wish Daizen Maeda was here for the rest of his career, quite frankly. Now, what I'm going to say before I talk about any of these reports is that I have never seen this source before. I have never seen this publication. I couldn't tell you if it's trustworthy, if it's reliable. If anything, I think it looks more on the side of unreliable. However, the reason that we're looking at it is more to do with the apparent details surrounding his price tag in this article. So an English publication caught offside, who are looking into Crystal Palace and West Ham here, are saying that both of them down in England, West Ham and Crystal Palace, are battling for Daizen Maeda. Apparently he's become a hot commodity in the English Premier League transfer market, and several English clubs are expressing strong interest, including Fulham, Brentford, Crystal Palace, West Ham and Leeds United, who have all joined the race for Daizen Maeda. And apparently Celtic are aware of the rising stock, and have placed a £25 million price tag on their prized forward. So listen, at the end of the day, once again, there's no point being ignorant. There's no point playing dumb. When you have a season like Daizen Maeda is having, you're going to catch the eye of teams all over the country, all over Europe. And if you want to sit there and pretend like that's not going to catch the eye of these teams, then once again, I wish I was you, I envy you, but you need to wake up and you need to just basically accept the truth. I don't know how much truth is in these teams or whatever, but the thing that I wanted to point out was the £25 million price tag. Is that enough? Should Celtic be looking for more? I think that is what the big conversation point will be around Daizen Maeda this summer, if it looks as though he's on for a move. Daizen is in the prime years of his career. The time for a big move to the Premier League is probably now. So if teams do come in this summer, I don't think we can rule out a move for Daizen Maeda, and I hate saying that, but I think that we need to accept that could very well be a possibility, especially when we're 2 months on from the rumours of a contract extension and nothing's been signed. I think he's probably pretty aware that there will be clubs circling his name, and maybe that's why there's a delay in him putting pen to paper. But £25 million, listen, I don't expect us to surpass the 30 million mark of what we got for Matt O'Reilly. Matt O'Reilly was a very unique player in the sense that he was a young player, a lot of upside, a lot of potential, very talented, of course, had the English tax from being trained at Fulham. I don't think we'll be able to surpass that, but I think you could make the case that after the season Daizen Maeda's had, one of the best seasons we've seen in Scotland in a long, long time for a forward, especially considering the majority of it's coming from the wings, that Celtic should be putting that price up. That they should be pricing him higher. He's one of the most unique footballers I've ever seen in my life. In fact, he could be the most unique. His pace, his power, his attributes that he's improved on technically this season, everything about him is so hard. I think by the time he's gone, whenever that might be, whether it's this summer, next summer, in 5 summers' time, whenever Daizen Maeda leaves Celtic, I think you could make a strong argument that he might end up being the toughest player to replace we've ever seen. Because how do you replace a player like him? A player who can play 90 minutes twice a week without breaking a sweat. A player who has right backs on a leash. A player who is such a charismatic enigma of a player. How do you replace that? I think he could be the toughest Celtic player ever to replace in my lifetime, bar Henrik Larsson. And I just worry about that. So should Celtic be trying to drive up that price? I think you could make the case for that. They obviously can't take it too far. You're just going to be like, you're going to be told where to go. But we need to start demanding more, man. Simple as that. These English teams are willing to pay silly money for players all over the continent. Just because we're Celtic from Glasgow in Scotland doesn't mean we should be underestimating our players and undervaluing our players. Yeah, I think it's a big summer when it comes to Daizen Maeda. 33 goals across all competitions this season. I believe 4 of them came in the Champions League. He was our Champions League top scorer. He is a great player. A phenomenal player that we just don't want to lose. So let's treat it like that. We don't want to lose him. Let's put the price up and let's try our best to give him everything he needs or wants to stay here at Celtic. It's a great place to be. And I know we're a stepping stone club in this day and age, but let's try to convince players that are here that we can be more than a stepping stone club. Help give Rodgers all the tools he needs in the 3rd year of his 3-year project. And one of those tools and one of those needs should be Daizen Maeda. So, with all the negativity floating around about whether or not we'll see the likes of Hatate and Maeda next year, I think to try and be positive and to try and look at things a bit more optimistically, ultimately what we need is the club to get deals on the table, to try and influence them to stay. I'm pretty accepting of Reo Hatate potentially leaving this summer. I think that time is coming. But Daizen, let's throw the kitchen sink at it, man. Let's give him a major extension. Let's give him a bumper deal. Do anything we can. And if we have to go down swinging, then so be it. But I want us to go down swinging. I don't want us to go down without a fight. Right, that does it for today's video. Let me know all your opinions in the comments below and what you think will happen with each of the players that we spoke about today down there as well. If you've enjoyed, like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.